You? Get out of this town. Vice Principal Henderson didn't laugh. He scoffed, the way a man does when he believes the world is already written and someone like you doesn't get a chapter. Come on, Ava. Don't embarrass yourself. Ava Miller stood frozen in his cramped, stale office while he inspected the letter she had waited her whole life for. She kept her hands clasped tightly, as though gripping the edges of the future that was slipping away faster than she could hold it. The envelope had arrived that morning, cream-colored, embossed seal, the American Academy for Global Diplomacy, the most prestigious youth diplomatic institute in the country. She had opened it on her porch, sunlight hitting the gold crest as she read the words, "Congratulations, Ava Miller. You have been awarded a full merit scholarship." Her breath had vanished. She'd spent years studying late with a flashlight under blankets, volunteering at city council meetings, entering debate. Competitions she had no business winning, and she won them anyway. But Henderson didn't see that, he never had. "Let me guess," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You think some elite academy is going to come to you with open arms? Ava, the world doesn't work that way." "It's real," Ava insisted. Her voice trembled but held. "They chose me. They want me there." Henderson flicked his wrist dismissively. "And who told you that?" "Your father. Your mother." A smirk. "Oh, wait. That's right." He didn't have to finish. Everyone in the dusty town of Mason Creek knew her mother had left years ago, leaving Ava and her father on a property that looked like it was barely standing. Everyone knew her father worked 2 jobs and barely kept up with bills. "Kids like you stay here," Henderson said. "You don't become diplomats. You don't get scholarships. You work at the feed store or the diner and live quiet, normal lives." Ava stepped forward, desperate. "Just verify it. Call them. Print my file, please." But Henderson had already made up his mind. He folded the acceptance letter in half, then in quarters. His fingers were slow, deliberate, cruel. And then he tossed it directly into the trash can beside his desk. Ava's breath left her in a gasp. "Stop!" she cried, rushing forward, but he blocked her with one hand. "It's time to grow up," he said flatly. "The sooner you accept your place, the better your life will be." She ran out of his office, choking on humiliation, the fluorescent lights flickering above her like a broken heartbeat. The students in the hallway whispered as she passed, "Did you hear? She lied about some academy letter. My cousin said the vice principal caught her making it up. Poor thing. She thinks she's special." Ava kept walking, fists balled, vision burning. At home, the Miller house sat crooked on dry soil, the paint peeling like sunburnt skin. Her father, Daniel Miller, sat at the table fixing a broken radio. He looked up only when she slammed the door. "Dad," she said, breathless, eyes red. "I got in. I got a full scholarship." Daniel put the screwdriver down slowly. "Ava, we talked about this." "No," she snapped, pulling the crumpled acceptance envelope from her backpack. "You talked. You said it was impossible. You said don't get your hopes up. But I did it. The academy wants me." Daniel's jaw tightened the way it always did before bad news. "You're 18, Ava. You don't know the world. People like us don't go to academies. We stay put. We survive. That's what Millers do." Ava shook her head fiercely. "That's what you did, not me." Daniel stood, voice rising. "I am not losing you, like I lost your mother." Ava froze. He never talked about her mother, not unless he was unraveling. Before she could respond, Daniel grabbed the letter from her hands. She reached for it, but he held it high, out of reach. And at that moment, in a flash of terrified stubbornness, he made a choice. That would scar Ava for life. He walked to the fire pit beside the porch, struck a match and held the acceptance letter over the flame. "Dad, stop!" Ava screamed. "You're staying here!" he shouted back. "End of story." The fire caught the edge of the paper, spreading, curling the words, consuming the gold crest. "No." Ava lunged forward, but it was too late. The letter, her future, burned to ash in seconds. Her father turned away, chest heaving, refusing to meet her horrified stare. Inside a silent hotel suite 2 states away, a man in a diplomatic suit reviewed a file on his tablet. Ambassador Lucas Hayes, top recruiter for the American Academy. He frowned at the missing confirmation from one student, whose file impressed him beyond all expectation. "Ava Miller," he muttered. "Why hasn't she accepted?" He closed the tablet decisively. "Prep the car," he told his assistant. "We're going to Mason Creek. Tonight." Ava didn't know it yet, but someone powerful was already on their way to pull her future out of the fire. Ava didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the window that looked out toward the dark hills surrounding Mason Creek. Out there, life went on. The crickets sang, the wind swept through the broken fence, the night breathed. But inside her chest, everything felt silent, dead, burned like the ashes of her letter. Her father's heavy footsteps moved around the kitchen downstairs. He hadn't tried to apologize. He hadn't tried to explain. Maybe he thought the silence was enough, that she'd cool down, accept her place, just like he had. But Ava wasn't cooling down. She was crystallizing. By dawn, she stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair with shaking hands. The old glass was scratched, distorting her reflection, but she didn't care. She pulled on her faded jeans and the jacket she'd saved up for months to buy, the one that made her feel like she belonged somewhere bigger. Then came the part she dreaded. School. She knew exactly what would be waiting for her. Rumors spread in Mason Creek faster than wildfire in July. At 7:42 a.m. she stepped onto school grounds. Heads turned immediately. Is that her? She really thought she'd get out of here. I heard Henderson caught her forging the letter. Ava kept her chin up, but every whisper was a needle dragging across her skin. At her locker, she found a slip of paper taped to the metal door. Sharpie, all caps. Liar. She closed her eyes, breathed once, pulled it off. Behind her, a group of students laughed, the kind that laughed because it was easier than standing up for someone. Then she heard the voice that always cut deeper than the others. Well, look who's here. Kelsey Ward, captain of the speech team, daughter of the town council president, the girl who had always been told yes. She leaned against the lockers with crossed arms and a mocking grin. So, how's the international diplomacy career going? Oh, right. She made a dramatic gesture of something burning. Oops. Ava ignored her and opened her locker. Kelsey stepped closer. You know what the funniest part is? You could have just accepted your life. Mason Creek isn't that bad. Some of us make something of ourselves here. Ava closed her locker door gently, not slamming it, not reacting, which somehow infuriated Kelsey even more. Don't walk away from me, Kelsey snapped. Ava turned, looked her straight in the eyes, calm, controlled. I'm not walking away from you, she said quietly. I'm walking towards something you can't even see. Kelsey blinked, thrown off. Before she could respond, the first period bell rang. Ava walked through the hallway with steady steps, even though her insides were shaking. She headed toward the auditorium for morning assembly, where the principal usually delivered the same recycled announcements. But as the double doors opened, she stopped. The atmosphere felt strange, buzzing, uneasy. Students whispered. Teachers frowned. Something wasn't normal. Then she saw him. A tall man in a navy diplomatic suit stood beside the principal at the front of the auditorium. Beside him, his assistant held a leather portfolio. Both looked wildly out of place in the small-town school, with its squeaky chairs and buzzing lights. Ava's heart stopped. It was the man from the brochure, the man whose signature was on the acceptance letter, Ambassador Lucas Hayes. Principal Garner tapped the microphone. Students, we have an unexpected guest today. Ambassador Hayes has traveled from Washington, D.C. to speak with one specific student. Whispers exploded. Hayes scanned the crowd, searching, and then his eyes found her. Ava froze, breath caught in her throat. No one else in the auditorium existed in that moment. He stepped forward. Ava Miller, the ambassador said into the microphone, voice firm and unmistakably authoritative. May I speak with you? A gasp rippled through the room. Kelsey's face drained. Teachers exchanged frantic glances. Vice Ava felt every heartbeat echoing in her ears as hundreds of eyes turned toward her. The entire auditorium seemed to lean in her direction, like the whole building was holding its breath. She didn't move. She wasn't sure she could. Her legs felt rooted to the thin carpet beneath her shoes. Ava, Ambassador Hayes repeated, not louder, just clearer, gentler. Please. The principal gestured awkwardly as if trying to encourage her to stand, but his face was pale. He hadn't known about her acceptance. Or maybe he had, and chosen to believe the wrong story. Slowly, Ava rose from her seat. The murmurs grew louder. That's her. The ambassador came for her. Did she lie or not? What's going on? Ava's throat tightened. The shame from last night still burned inside her. The ashes of her acceptance letter felt glued to her lungs. Yet now something else pushed against that shame. Confusion, fear, and beneath both, the faintest spark of hope. She made her way down the steps of the auditorium aisle. Each footstep felt heavier than the last. Kelsey watched with an expression that fluctuated rapidly. Disbelief, anger, embarrassment, fear. The girl who always had control finally didn't. Ava reached the front. Ambassador Hayes stepped forward and extended his hand. "Miss Miller," he said, "we've been trying to reach you. When you didn't respond to our acceptance confirmation, I became concerned." The assistant opened the leather portfolio. Inside was a fresh document embossed with gold. Ava's eyes widened. "It seems," the ambassador continued, "there was an interference in communication." That one word, interference, hit the auditorium like a dropped bomb. Kelsey's face turned ghost white. The principal blinked rapidly. Teachers shifted uncomfortably. And Ava, for the first time in years, she felt something break free inside her, something unspoken, something that had been crushed again and again in this town. Her voice, "I never declined," she said softly. "Someone destroyed my letter before I even saw it." A wave of gasps spread through the room, but Hayes wasn't surprised. He nodded, as if her statement confirmed what he already suspected. He handed her the new letter. "This," he said, "is your official acceptance. The World Youth Diplomacy Program begins in 4 weeks. I personally came to ensure you received it." Ava held the envelope in trembling hands. It didn't feel real, but it was real. More real than anything in her entire life. Then Ambassador Hayes turned to Principal Garner. "Mr. Garner," he said with a diplomatic smile that was sharp enough to cut glass, "I would like to request a private meeting regarding how Mason Creek High handles its students' opportunities." The principal swallowed hard. "Yes, of course, Ambassador." "And," Hayes added, glancing toward the students, "I would also like the school to address the environment of harassment Miss Miller has endured since her acceptance was mishandled." A few teachers looked at the floor. Kelsey nearly sank into her seat. Ava couldn't breathe, not because she was scared, but because the entire world had just flipped on its axis. For the first time ever, someone powerful had stepped into her life and said, "I believe you." As the assembly dispersed, chaos exploded in the hallways. Students whispered, gawked, speculated. Some stared at Ava like she had sprouted wings. Others avoided meeting her eyes, ashamed. She started walking toward the exit, clutching the acceptance letter close to her chest. Her steps were faster now, shaky but determined. "Hey, Ava!" a voice called. She turned. It was Kelsey. For the first time since Ava had known her, Kelsey didn't look confident. Her eyes were watery. Her hands trembled. She looked human. "Can we talk?" Kelsey asked. Ava didn't respond. Kelsey stepped closer. "Look, I didn't know he'd actually come. I didn't think—" Ava cut her off, her voice steady. "You didn't think anyone would ever care enough to check." Kelsey closed her mouth. Ava walked past her, and for the first time, Kelsey Ward didn't follow, didn't fight, didn't smirk. She just stood there, small, shaken, and exposed. Ava stepped outside into the daylight. Cold air filled her lungs. The sky felt bigger than she remembered. She looked at the acceptance letter again. Then she whispered to herself, "This time, nobody's burning it." Ava walked home as if the air itself had changed. Density, lighter, sharper, electric. Houses she'd passed 1,000 times suddenly felt less like walls and more like boundaries she might finally cross. She held the acceptance letter tightly, half afraid it might vanish like the first one. But this one was real, sturdy, crisp, stamped with the gold seal she thought she'd never see again. Her steps slowed as Mason Creek's familiar old streets stretched out before her. She had grown up here. She had cried here. She had dreamed here, quietly in secret, because dreaming too loudly could get you mocked. But today the town seemed smaller, like it could no longer hold her. When Ava reached her front porch, her mother burst through the door with panic all over her face. "Ava, honey, are you okay? The school called and someone said an ambassador was there and—" Ava held the envelope up. Her mother stopped breathing. "Oh my God," she whispered, pressing a hand to her mouth. "Sweetheart, is that—" Ava nodded. Her mother pulled her into a trembling hug, squeezing like she was afraid Ava might evaporate. "They told me you declined. They told me there was nothing we could do. I wanted to go to the school, but I didn't want to make it worse for you." "It wasn't you," Ava said softly. "Someone burned my letter." Her mother stepped back, fury darkening her eyes. "Who?" "Kelsey," Ava said. "But it doesn't matter anymore." Her mother took a long breath. "Oh, it matters. But not today." For the first time in months, Ava saw tears in her mother's eyes. Not worried, not disappointed tears, but relieved ones. "You did it," she whispered. No matter what they tried to take from you, you still made it. Ava looked down at the letter again. I'm leaving this town, Mom. Her mother brushed a strand of hair from her face. Yes, she said, you are. Later that evening, Mason Creek buzzed like a beehive struck with a stick. People talked at the grocery store, whispered on porches, sent frantic group texts. Some blamed the school, some blamed that ambassador with the attitude, some blamed Kelsey Ward, though few said her name out loud. But the most common phrase in town was simple. Did you hear? Ava Miller is going to Washington. And for the first time it wasn't said with pity, or doubt, or mockery. It was said with a mixture of shock and respect. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of her enormous house, Kelsey sat on her bedroom floor, knees pulled. To her chest, the remains of her perfect mascara mornings smeared across her cheeks. Everything felt wrong. Her parents had screamed at her, not because she sabotaged someone's future, but because she made the family look bad. Her mother had said, "We raised you to be better than this," while her father muttered something about connections and what if this ruins everything. Now Kelsey just stared at her phone. A dozen texts from classmates. Most were supportive but edged with fear or confusion, but a few were brutal. You're a monster. You should apologize now. She deserved better than you. Kelsey wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. How had it all gone so wrong? She didn't hate Ava. Not really. She just hated losing. And for once, she wasn't the one chosen. She wasn't the star. She wasn't the girl with the letter. And something inside her, something ugly, something she once thought she could control, had snapped. She grabbed her phone and typed a message. Kelsey, Ava, can we please talk? She stared at the screen, waiting. Ava didn't reply. Kelsey swallowed, feeling the kind of dread that sparks only when a person realizes they might be the villain in their own story. Meanwhile, Ava sat at her desk, looking at the program brochure the ambassador's assistant had given her. She traced her fingers along the embossed emblem. International diplomacy, world leadership workshops, foreign policy simulations, speeches at global conferences, 60 students chosen worldwide. 60, and she was one of them. Ava closed her eyes, letting the reality settle in. Then she whispered to herself, not as a dream, but as a promise. I'm getting out of here, and I'm never letting anyone burn my future again. Outside her window, Mason Creek streetlights blinked on, little glowing dots in a town far too small for the girl who had just outgrown it. The next morning, Mason Creek High felt different. Students clustered in unusually tight groups, whispering viciously or anxiously or both. It wasn't every day that an ambassador showed up and publicly corrected the entire school administration. It wasn't every day that someone's future burned, then resurrected itself in front of a crowd. It definitely wasn't every day that Ava Miller became the center of town-wide conversation. When she stepped onto campus, conversations halted mid-sentence. Eyes followed her from every doorway, every hallway corner, every locker row. Some gazes were admiring, some were jealous, some were calculating, especially from the teachers who had brushed her off for years. But the loudest silence came from Principal Hardwick's office. Ava saw him through the glass window, pacing, arguing with someone on speakerphone, face purple with stress. The ambassador's visit had exposed everything, the negligence, the favoritism, the false narrative that Ava declined the program. Ava almost felt sorry for him. Almost. She headed to class, clutching her books tighter than usual. Her chest buzzed with nerves, not fear but unfamiliar attention. When she sat down, her teacher, Mrs. Pierce, walked in, stopped abruptly, then forced a smile so stiff it looked painful. Ava, she said gently, I just wanted to say, we're all so proud of you. The class blinked. Proud? Ava nearly laughed. Mrs. Pierce had rolled her eyes when Ava said she wanted to apply for the program. She had once said, dreams are cute, but you need to be realistic. Now the teacher took a shaky step closer. If you need letters of recommendation for anything, please let me know. I'd be more than happy. Ava swallowed. Thank you, Mrs. Pierce, she said, her voice polite but distant. People changed quickly when they smelled prestige. At lunch, the cafeteria shifted like tectonic plates when Ava walked in. The popular table, where Kelsey usually reigned, fell dead silent. Kelsey wasn't there. Instead, students at nearby tables avoided Ava's eyes. Some gave awkward nods of support. Others seemed unsure whether to congratulate her or stay quiet. Finally, a small group moved toward her. Not the popular kids, not the bullies, just 3 classmates who never caused trouble. Tori, Ethan, and Milo. They stopped in front of her awkwardly. Hey, Ava, Tori said, brushing a frizzy curl behind her ear. We, just wanted to say we're really happy for you. Ethan nodded. Seriously, what happened to you was messed up. And, Milo added, you handled it way better than most people would. Ava blinked. These weren't friends, not exactly, but they weren't enemies either. Maybe they had just been quiet observers all along. Thank you, Ava said softly. They sat with her. For the first time all year, she didn't eat lunch alone. It was small, but it mattered. Across campus, Kelsey finally emerged from the counselor's office, eyes puffed, mascara minimal for once. She scanned the courtyard until she saw Ava eating with Tori and the others. The sight twisted something in her stomach. Not jealousy, not anger, something heavier. She walked toward Ava slowly, clutching the strap of her purse like it could anchor her. Students noticed immediately. Conversations stuttered. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Dozens of eyes watched the moment unfold. Kelsey stopped 2 steps from the table. Ava, she said, voice barely holding steady, can we please talk? The courtyard held its breath. Tori, Ethan, and Milo all looked at Ava. Ava looked at Kelsey. Her eyes were swollen. Her jaw trembled. She looked less like the untouchable queen of Mason Creek High and more like a girl who had finally met the consequences of her actions. Ava stood slowly. Sure, she said. Let's talk. They walked to the edge of the courtyard under the shade of an old oak tree, a place where rumors could watch but not completely consume them. Kelsey sniffed. Ava, I'm sorry. I mean it. I didn't think I just felt insecure, Ava finished. Kelsey's lips tightened. Another tear slipped down. Yes, she whispered. Ava crossed her arms. Do you know what you cost me? I know, Kelsey said. And I know you probably hate me. I wanted you to know that I really am sorry. Ava studied her face, the genuine tremor in her voice, the shame clouding her eyes. She didn't trust her. Not yet. Maybe never. But the apology was real. Thank you for saying that, Ava said finally. But you don't get to erase what you did. Kelsey nodded, shoulders sagging. I know. Then she stepped back. You deserve everything they said about you yesterday. Everything good, I mean. Ava said nothing. Kelsey walked away slowly, like someone leaving the scene of a crime she could never fully repair, and for a moment, Ava felt something unexpected. Not triumph, not superiority, but clarity. Some people apologize because they're sorry, some apologize because they were caught, and some apologize because the person they hurt became too bright to ignore. When Ava returned to the table, Tori raised her eyebrows. Well, she whispered. Ava sat, let out a slow breath and said, It's complicated. But deep down she knew the truth. Nothing about her life was ever going to be simple again. By the next morning, the ambassador's visit had already grown into legend. Rumors spread through Mason Creek faster than wildfire in a dry valley. By noon, there were at least 6 different versions of the story. She was secretly chosen because she cured a sick tourist on vacation. No, she saved the ambassador's daughter last summer. You didn't hear? Her dad used to work for the embassy. It's all nepotism. Ava heard them all while walking down the hallway. It was surreal. For years, she'd been invisible. Now, she was mythical. She tightened the straps on her backpack and tried to ignore the swirling voices. She didn't crave attention. She only wanted her life back on track, the future she'd earned through nights of studying while the whole town assumed she would never leave. But every time she turned a corner, someone stared. Every time she opened a door, someone whispered. And every time she thought she could breathe again, there it was, her burnt letter, or at least the memory of it. She could still smell the smoke, hear the crackle, feel the panic as she watched the flames swallow everything. Her father's face, her mother's trembling hands, her sister standing by the sink, silent, complicit, pain knotted in her stomach. Their house no longer felt like home. It felt like an abandoned battlefield. That evening, Ava found her mother in the kitchen cutting vegetables mechanically. The fluorescent light flickered overhead. Dinner will be ready soon, her mother said, her voice soft, careful, too careful. Ava sat at the table, backpack still on. Why did you let him do it? Her mother froze mid-slice. The knife clattered slightly. I didn't let him, she whispered. You didn't stop him. The silence between them stretched like a frayed thread ready to snap. Her mother swallowed hard. I was scared, Ava. Of what? Ava's voice cracked. Dad? This town? Or me succeeding? Her mother flinched. Tears welled. Ava, I've never had choices not like you. I was terrified of watching you leave, terrified of losing you. A painful truth, but not a justification. Ava pushed her chair back. Fear doesn't give you the right to destroy someone else's future. Her mother's chin trembled. I know I failed you. For the first time, Ava saw her mother not as an accomplice, but as a woman trapped by her own history of small dreams and smaller expectations. Still, Ava couldn't stay in that kitchen a second longer. She grabbed her jacket and stepped outside. The cold air slapped her cheeks immediately, grounding her. She needed space. She needed clarity. She needed anything other than that suffocating house. She walked farther than she intended, past the grocery store, past the old pawn shop, past the broken bus stop, where she used to wait for rides to the community library. She didn't stop until she reached the hill overlooking the entire town. Mason Creek glittered weakly below her, a handful of streetlights fighting through the night. Ava wrapped her arms around herself. This place, she whispered, will not define me. Not anymore. The next day, the school counselor called her in. Congratulations, Ava, Ms. Petrus said with too bright enthusiasm. I'm coordinating with the ambassador's office. They'll be sending some preliminary documents soon. Ava blinked. Preliminary documents? Yes, your official acceptance confirmation, details about travel, required documentation. Your original packet was, well, she cleared her throat. Destroyed. Ava's heart clenched. She had known. Of course she had. But hearing it stated plainly felt like reliving the loss. Ms. Petrus turned her computer screen around. An email was open, stamped with an official seal. Subject line, follow-up regarding Ava Miller, priority. Ava read every word carefully, her name repeated over and over in bold letters. She felt dizzy. Wait, she said slowly. You're telling me the ambassador is still personally involved? Ms. Petrus nodded. He requested updates. Daily ones. Ava sat back in the chair, stunned. Why would someone so important care so much? Was it because he had seen the injustice firsthand? Because he believed in her? Because her story was bigger than this tiny town? Maybe all of the above. When Ava stepped into the hallway after the meeting, a shadow blocked her path. Ryan, star athlete, never spoken a full sentence to her. Now, he shoved his hands into his pockets awkwardly. Hey, Ava, congrats. I mean it. Ava raised an eyebrow. Ryan congratulating her? He scratched the back of his neck. Look, people were jerks to you. We all thought... He exhaled sharply. We thought this town decides everything, but you're proving it doesn't. Ava didn't know what to say. He nodded once more and walked off before she could respond. Her world was changing faster than she could process. The town wasn't just noticing her. It was shifting around her, recalibrating its entire hierarchy, because one girl had broken through a barrier they all believed was unbreakable. Ava tightened her grip on her backpack straps. Things were only getting started, and soon, something far bigger than rumors, apologies, or burned letters would hit Mason Creek like a shockwave. The ambassador wasn't done, not even close. 2 days later, Mason Creek woke up to something it had never seen before. A black diplomatic SUV rolling through Main Street at 8:14 a.m. People stopped mid-step. The barista at Java Creek dropped a cup. A delivery driver nearly forgot he was still holding a package. Diplomatic vehicles didn't come here. They went to Washington, New York, major cities, not a dusty little town where ambition was treated like a personality flaw. Inside the school, Ava didn't know anything was happening yet. She was at her locker, switching her textbooks, trying to ignore the stares and whispers. Then the intercom beeped. Every classroom, hallway, and office froze. Attention, students, Principal Hardwick said, voice shaking slightly. Please remain in your classrooms. We have an official visitor arriving on campus. Ava's stomach flipped. No, it couldn't be, but her heart knew. A moment later, her English teacher's classroom door opened, and in walked two security personnel in black suits. And tell me in the
Ava
comments
Miller,
where you're watching
one
from.
of them asked.
City and
The
state.
entire class turned toward
I'd love to
her.
know how far
Ava
this story
stood,
traveled,
pulse
pounding in her ears. Yes? Please come with us. Every single student in that classroom held their breath as Ava stepped out, clutching her notebook like a lifeline. They walked her down the hallway, slowly, deliberately, students silently peeking through door windows. Then the double doors at the end of the hall opened, and there he was, Ambassador Jonathan Hale, the same man who had defended her in the auditorium, the same man whose presence had shaken the entire town. He turned when he saw her. Ava? he said warmly. Good to see you again. She swallowed hard. Ambassador Hale, I didn't expect you to come back. He gestured gently toward a quiet corner of the lobby. May we speak privately? They stepped aside, though dozens of eyes were still watching from classrooms and offices. The ambassador reached into a leather portfolio and handed her a packet, thick, sealed, marked with official insignia. This, he said, is your formal acceptance confirmation, with my signature. And the committee's. Ava's fingers trembled as she held it. I don't know what to say. Just keep working hard, he said. Your future is bigger than anything this town ever told you to settle for. Ava blinked fast, trying not to cry in front of the entire school. This program selects only a handful of students worldwide, he continued, and you earned that spot. No manipulation, no favoritism. The truth needed to be restored. Ava managed a shaky breath. Thank you, really. Thank you for everything. He smiled kindly. There's one more thing. Her heart paused. He stepped aside, and another figure appeared behind him. Tall, well-dressed, young, maybe mid-20s, with a government badge clipped to his coat. This is Daniel Reyes, the ambassador said. He'll be your liaison. He'll help prepare you for the program. Daniel extended a hand. It's an honor, Ava. I've read your files, all of them. You have a striking profile. Ava blushed, caught between awe and disbelief. Students behind the glass whispered like their lives depended on it. When Ava returned to class 20 minutes later, the entire school buzzed like a hive struck with a stick. Every head snapped toward her. A chorus of whispers rose like smoke. She has a liaison? He came back for her? What did she do to deserve all this? Some tones were admiring, others envious, a few resentful. But this moment wasn't about them. Ava took her seat calmly, slow, measured, purposeful. This time, Mrs. Pierce didn't try to hide her awe. Everyone, she said, clearing her throat, please congratulate Ava Miller on her official acceptance to the International Scholars Initiative. The class applauded, but one person didn't. Kelsey. Her eyes held a complicated mixture of regret, jealousy, and something like fear, as if she was suddenly realizing the gap between them had grown into a canyon. After school, Ava walked outside and found Daniel leaning against the diplomatic SUV. He straightened and smiled. Walk with me. She nodded. They strolled down the sidewalk, the cool breeze brushing past them. Across the street, townspeople pretended not to stare. You'll need a passport renewal, Daniel said, and a series of preparatory modules. We'll also coordinate travel, accommodation, and preliminary training. Ava nodded, overwhelmed. It still feels like a dream, she admitted. Daniel studied her with genuine interest. You know, he said softly, most scholars who get this far come from families who push them. You got here despite your circumstances. That makes you exceptional. Ava stopped walking. The breeze quieted. Even the street noise somehow dimmed. Daniel, she said slowly, my family burned my future, and the only reason I'm standing here right now is because someone stepped in at the last second. Daniel tilted his head. Maybe, or maybe you would have found another way. People like you always do. Ava stared at him, unsure whether to be moved or terrified by how confidently he said it. Someone like her. What did that even mean? Before she could ask, Daniel opened the SUV door for her. I'll see you soon, scholar. The word hit her like a spark. Scholar. Not small-town girl, not dreamer, not nobody, scholar. But as the SUV pulled away, and Ava watched the reflection of her own face in the window, one question burned hotter than the letter her father destroyed. What was she becoming? And more importantly, who in this town wasn't ready to let her become it? Because someone wasn't done fighting, someone wasn't done sabotaging, and the next blow would come from a direction she least expected. The next morning began like any other, fog lifting slowly from the valley, early buses grumbling through Mason Creek, students dragging tired feet toward another predictable school day. But for Ava, nothing felt predictable anymore. She walked into school with a strange mixture of adrenaline and dread. Something in her gut tugged at her all night, a quiet warning she couldn't explain. Even as she tried to focus on her books, her mind replayed Daniel's words. People like you always find a way. She didn't feel like people like her. She didn't even know what that meant. But before the thought settled, she noticed something odd. The moment she stepped into the hallway, conversations didn't just pause. They died completely. Students didn't whisper this time. They just stared, not with admiration, not with curiosity, with concern and something else. Pity. Ava's pulse quickened. She pushed through the staring clusters until she reached her locker. Just as she lifted her hand to open it, someone grabbed her wrist. It was Tori. "Ava," she whispered urgently, eyes wide. "Don't open it." Ava froze. "Why?" Tori swallowed hard and stepped aside. Ava's locker door was already slightly open, just enough for her to see the mess spilling out. Pages, dozens of them, some torn, some crumpled, all marked with official seals. Ava's blood ran cold. Her acceptance documents, the ones the ambassador had given her, were scattered and shredded inside her locker, like someone fed them to a paper shredder by hand. "No," Ava whispered, reaching forward with trembling fingers. Mrs. Pierce rushed toward them, gasping. "Ava, don't touch anything. We need to get Principal Hardwick. This is vandalism. Vandalism, violation, sabotage." The hallway erupted with shouts as students drew closer, horrified. Suddenly, Ava saw movement at the edge of the crowd. Kelsey, standing still, face pale, eyes locked on Ava. Ava's chest tightened. "Did you do this?" she asked sharply. Kelsey's hands shot up. "What?" "No! Ava, I swear. I came in and saw people talking about... I didn't... You expect me to believe... Hey." Tori touched Ava's shoulder gently. "Look." A single piece of paper lay on the floor, separate from the others. More intact, not shredded, but folded. Ava bent down and picked it up. It wasn't part of her packet. It was a handwritten note. Short, sharp, cruel. "Stay where you belong." The words hit her harder than the cold air in the parking lot last night. Her vision blurred for a moment, darkness tunneling her focus. Who wrote this? Why now? Why this? Mrs. Pierce marched down the hall. "Everyone step back. Give her room." Students moved reluctantly. Ava's hands shook as she held the note. Her heartbeat thudded painfully against her ribs. Tori whispered, "Ava, you need to breathe." She tried, but air barely escaped her lungs. Then, "Ava!" A voice boomed from behind the crowd. Daniel Reyes. He was there, striding down the hallway with urgency and fire in his eyes. Students parted instantly. He reached her in seconds. "Are you hurt?" he asked first. Ava shook her head, mute. Daniel surveyed the wreckage inside her locker. His jaw clenched. He picked up a torn document and examined the seal. "This was deliberate," he said coldly. "Very deliberate." Mrs. Pierce nodded. "We'll run cameras." "No," Daniel interrupted. "This goes beyond school cameras. This is a federal matter now." Gasps erupted around them. Principal Hardwick jogged over, panting. "Ambassador Hale notified me you'd be visiting again, Mr. Reyes, but I never expected—" Daniel ignored him. His attention was entirely on Ava. "We'll replace every document," he said firmly. "No one here has the power to sabotage your future again. Do you hear me?" Ava's throat tightened. She nodded, but barely. Then Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough for only her to hear. "And whoever did this will regret it." Ava's breath trembled, not because of the threat, but because for the first time she felt the full weight of a truth she had been avoiding. Someone in this town truly hated the idea of her leaving. Someone wanted her to stay small, silent, trapped. Someone feared who she might become. That evening, Ava sat on her bed, staring at the note again. Her room felt smaller than ever. Her father was downstairs watching TV loudly, pretending nothing was wrong. Her mother was pretending to clean, wiping the same counter over and over with a shaky hand. The house felt haunted, not by ghosts, by choices. Ava read the note again. "Stay where you belong." Her hands curled into fists. Belong, belong. Who were they to decide where she belonged? She felt her determination harden into something sharper, something rooted deeper than anger, resolve. She folded the note carefully and tucked it into a drawer, not as evidence, though Daniel would want it, but as a reminder. If she stayed in Mason Creek forever, it wouldn't be because someone burned letters, shredded documents, or scribbled threats. It would only happen if she gave up, and she wasn't giving up, not now, not after everything. Ava lay back on her bed and exhaled slowly. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow she'd fight back. But she had no idea that the biggest confrontation was coming sooner than tomorrow, and that the person behind the sabotage wasn't who she suspected, not even close. Ava barely slept that night. Every creak in the house felt like footsteps. Every gust of wind against her window felt like someone watching. The shredded documents, the note, the silent stares at school. She replayed each detail until morning light crept through her curtains, pale and cold. When she finally got up and dressed, her hands shook slightly. This wasn't anxiety. It was anticipation. Someone had crossed a line, a federal line, and Daniel wasn't the only one determined to expose the truth. When Ava stepped outside to head to school, she spotted something odd near the mailbox. A torn envelope, brown, government-issued. Her breath stopped. She crouched down and picked it up. It was her replacement packet, or had been. Now it was ripped open, empty, thrown aside like trash. Someone had intercepted it before she even knew it arrived. A chill climbed her spine. Not random, not opportunistic. This person knew her schedule, knew when her parents were gone, knew exactly where to strike. Every instinct screamed danger. She tucked the empty envelope into her bag and started walking, faster, eyes alert. It wasn't until she reached campus that she saw him, Daniel, standing near the entrance with his arms crossed, scanning the crowd like a hawk waiting for movement. The second his eyes met hers, his posture shifted. "Ava," he rushed forward. "What happened? You texted urgent." She pulled the envelope out of her bag. His face hardened immediately. "Where did you find it?" he asked. "In front of my house." Daniel muttered a curse under his breath, something sharp, something he wasn't supposed to say in front of students. "This confirms it," he said darkly. "This isn't a jealous classmate. This is targeted sabotage." Students nearby slowed down to listen, but Daniel's tone made them scatter quickly. "Come with me," he said. They walked to Principal Hardwick's office, where the man nearly jumped out of his seat when they entered. Daniel dropped the torn envelope on the desk. "Ambassador Hale needs this documented. Today." Hardwick swallowed hard. Of course. And," Daniel added, "check your campus access logs from yesterday, every door, every time stamp." The principal blinked. "Why?" "Because whoever vandalized her locker didn't break in. They knew the system. They had a code. Or they had access." Ava's stomach twisted. "Someone from the staff," she whispered. Daniel nodded grimly. "Someone with clearance." The room fell silent. Hardwick's face paled. I'll get the logs right away." Ava and Daniel stepped outside, the morning sun barely warming the tension around them. "Daniel," Ava said softly, "who do you think did it?" His voice lowered. "We have two main suspects." Ava swallowed. "Who?" "Someone who felt threatened by your acceptance," Daniel said, "or someone who's been controlling your family for years." Her breath faltered. "My family." Daniel's eyes stayed locked on hers. "Does anyone in your house oppose you leaving?" Ava felt the world narrow into one cold, painful truth. Her father. Daniel saw the realization hit her. "I'm not saying it was him," he clarified gently, "but sabotage often comes from the closest circle." Ava's knees went weak. The burnt letter, the tears, the forced explanations. Her father blaming her for thinking she was better than everyone, blaming her mother for raising a girl who doesn't know her place, blaming the town for filling her head with nonsense. She pressed a hand to her forehead. No, he wouldn't, but she couldn't finish the sentence. Not truthfully. Daniel stood silently beside her. Finally, she whispered, "You think he stole the packet?" "I think," Daniel said carefully, "that we should find out before accusing anyone." Later that afternoon, Principal Hardwick called them both back to the office. His hands shook as he held a printed report. "We checked the logs," he said. "And you need to see this." Daniel grabbed the paper. Ava stood close enough to read over his shoulder, her breath caught in her throat. The access code used to open her locker hallway door at 6:47 a.m. belonged to a staff member, but not a teacher, not an admin, not the janitorial crew. It belonged to someone Ava never would have suspected, Mrs. Carter, the school secretary, the same woman who always smiled at her, the same woman who brought her bottled water on study nights, the same woman who said, "Ava, you're too smart for this place." Ava's head spun. "Why would she—" "Because," Daniel interrupted, "she's also your father's cousin." Ava staggered back a step. Her lungs refused to inhale. Mrs. Carter. Family. Blood. She was the one who opened the hallway. She was the one who allowed someone inside. Hardwick spoke quietly. "We checked the cameras. Someone else entered after she did. She didn't vandalize the locker herself. She enabled someone to do it." "Who?" Ava whispered, voice cracking. Hardwick hesitated. Daniel didn't. He turned to her slowly, gently, but with the weight of a truth she had been running from for years. "Ava, it was your father." The room tilted. Her hands went cold. Her heartbeat roared in her ears like a storm. "No." She shook her head. "No, he wouldn't. He couldn't." But deep down she knew. He could. He did. And suddenly everything became clear. The burnt letter, the silence at home, the fear in her mother's eyes, the way he slammed doors too hard, the way he hated the idea of her leaving. He didn't just want to keep her in Mason Creek. He wanted to keep her under his control. Daniel reached out, steadying her arm. "Ava," he said softly, "we're going to protect you. I promise." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, of something sharper, resolve, defiance. And the beginning of a fire no one could burn out. The truth was out, and the final confrontation was coming. Ava didn't remember walking home that afternoon. All she remembered was the numbness. Her feet moved through Mason Creek like she was drifting through a fog, houses blurring, voices fading, the familiar town suddenly foreign and hostile. Her father, her own father, the man who taught her how to ride a bike, who bought her ice cream after dentist appointments, who told her to stand up straight and look people in the eye, the same man who burned her future in their kitchen and tore apart her second chance at dawn. Her chest tightened as she reached the front porch. The door was already slightly open. Inside, the TV hummed softly. Her father sat in his recliner, boots on the coffee table, eating from a bag of chips like it was any ordinary day. When he saw her, his expression didn't change. No guilt, no fear, no shame, just irritation. "You're home early," he muttered. Ava felt her fingers curl into trembling fists. "Why did you do it?" she asked quietly. He popped another chip in his mouth. "Do what?" "The packet," she whispered. "The documents. You destroyed them. Again." His jaw tightened. Just a small twitch, but enough to confirm everything. "You shouldn't be snooping where you don't belong." Ava stepped closer. "Why? Why would you ruin everything I worked for?" Her father scoffed. "Worked for? Don't make me laugh. You think you earned that spot? People like us don't get opportunities like that. It's a fantasy, a setup for disappointment." Ava's breath hitched. "That's why you burned the first letter?" "No," he said bluntly. "I burned it because you were getting out of hand." Her voice shook. "Out of hand? You were getting ideas," he growled, "thinking you were too good for this family, for this town, for me." Ava felt the air crackle with something dangerous. Her father stood, towering over her. "You don't walk out on this family like it's nothing. You don't go across the world and pretend you're better than us." "I'm not pretending," she said softly. For the first time, his eyes flashed with something like fear, not of losing her, but of losing control. "You're not going," he snapped. "I'll make sure of it." Ava swallowed hard. "No," she said. "You won't." His face reddened. "I said you're not." A sharp knock at the door cut him off. Ava didn't move. Her father stiffened. The door opened, and standing there, Daniel Reyes, 2 embassy security officers, and behind them Ambassador Hale himself. Her father paled. What's this?" Ambassador Hale stepped inside, calm but cold. "A federal investigation," he said plainly. Her father stammered, I didn't. This is a misunderstanding." But Daniel held up the torn envelope. "This was tampered with," he said. "Federal property. Twice." Her father swallowed. Sweat gathered at his temples. "You don't understand. She's just a kid. She doesn't know what she's—" Ava stepped forward before he could finish. "No," she said firmly. "I'm not a kid, and I know exactly what I'm doing." Her father stared at her, the realization dawning that he had lost the last shred of control. The ambassador turned to Ava gently. "Ava, you have the right to leave this environment immediately, if you choose." Her father snapped, "She's not going anywhere." Daniel stepped between them. "She is," he said. "And she will." Ava felt a lump rise in her throat. "You hurt me," she whispered to her father. "More than you'll ever admit. But you won't hurt me again." For the first time, her father looked truly afraid. Afraid of consequences. Afraid of losing the one person he thought would never stand against him. "Ava," he said, voice cracking. But she shook her head. "No." She turned away. Daniel placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Let's go." Her mother appeared in the hallway, eyes red, hands trembling. But Ava didn't stop, didn't look back. She walked out the door, down the porch steps, and into the embassy SUV waiting at the curb. As the engine started, Ambassador Hale turned to her. "You're safe now." Ava exhaled, long, shaky, but freeing. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight lifting. Not because someone rescued her, but because she finally walked away. 3 months later, Ava stepped off the plane onto foreign soil. Sun brighter, air sharper, people rushing past in a dozen languages. She clutched her backpack and smiled. She wasn't the girl with the burned letter. She wasn't the girl stuck in a suffocating town. She wasn't the girl they tried to keep small. She was Ava Miller, scholar, survivor, and soon, something far greater. A new chapter began that day, thousands of miles from Mason Creek. But the lesson she carried forever was this: some people try to break you because they see the strength you haven't recognized yet, and sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is finally walk away. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, city and state. I'd love to know how far this story traveled.